Hello, everyone. How are you?
Hi. How are you?
Good, good. Kelly has mentioned that I can go ahead and get started. I want to be respectful of people's time. I know we just have the hour. I'm Lisa Pettis, and I serve as the Assistant Vice President for Student Support and Dean of Students out of the Division of Student Engagement and Success. Thank you for coming today. I didn't expect that there would be a lot of people, but we presented another time for the division, and we didn't have too many people, so I appreciate you being here. Disclosure here, some of you may already be doing some things with classroom management. I have all three of my degrees in education, so this is somewhat second nature because we have classes in our degree program, right, on how to deal with classroom management. But I also realize that those of you who are in other disciplines may have not had that opportunity. And so, what I have presented, or what I bring to you today, are just some things to consider. Obviously, you have the right to do what you want to and shape and form your class the way you do. But I hope in doing so that you bring forward a student-centric model in how you're managing your class. And so today I'll be presenting a few slides. I have colleagues from the Dean of Students team who will be here. And then during the last part of it, if there's time, we'll open it up to questions. And I've also asked our partners over in University Police Department to come up as well, too, in case there are questions. And the reason I asked that of them is because throughout the year in my new role, we've gotten a lot of calls in our department about how to handle these things or when does it cross the line. And so since we're talking today about classroom management and conduct, I thought it would be appropriate just in case there are some questions that I might not be able to answer. You'll be able to ask at that point. Again, we're going to focus today on classroom management and conduct. So defining classroom management, it's not Webster's definition. It's more of just some scenarios. What does that look like for it? When you're starting off a class or thinking about it, we just started the semester, thinking about what are those expectations. I'm sure you all do that, and it's listed in your syllabi. But I will be, honest to say that there are a lot of students from that share with us, it's syllabus day, all they're going to do is hand it out, and we don't have to come until the second day, right? I would urge you to really use that day to talk about what those expectations are in your classroom, right? And not just your expectations, but giving some time for your students to also give some feedback of what they're expecting out of the class and the type of relationship that they might want to have with you as well, right? So obviously establishing mutual respect. Everyone wants to be respected, right? When you have a mutual respect, you can disagree, but you can move forward on things that you're disagreeing on, right? Very important to learn students' names. No one likes to just be a number, right? Or what's your name again? And you're on that 5th class day and you can't remember. And I know that's hard for some of you in the social sciences who might have very large classes and so forth. It's difficult to do. But one of the things that you can think about as they're coming up to you, if you don't remember your name, I'm sorry, what was your name again? Sean. Oh, yeah, Sean. I'm sorry, I can't. And try to make a connection to where you are able to then remember their name, right? Establish a rapport with them beforehand. Is it house sound? Okay, let me get a microphone then as well too. I'm sorry. I think this is probably mostly for the video. Okay, sorry. I thought I was projecting. Mic check. Okay, I'm going to have to use my coaching voice here. That one's not on. I don't think this one's on either. Mic check, mic check. Nope, doesn't have the sound. Okay, let me use my coaching voice. How about that? Okay. I didn't want to, thinking I was already projecting a lot more. So talking about learning their names on that first day, right? And if, again, large classes, you may not be able to remember those things, but find ways to make that connection, find a commonality to remember what that name is. I know Sean has a brother, right? Oh yeah, my brother and Sean went to school at the same place, or something to that effect. We can work through things. Or I know Frank likes sports. He's into baseball. My son's into baseball. Let's remember those things. We're making that personal connection. That would help in situations like that. With inclusivity, we know we have a very diverse population here on campus, so thinking also about how they prefer to be identified, right? Using their pronouns. he or she, they, and things of that nature. Let them know that you're a human as well too, right? So the worst thing we can do in this classroom management aspect of it is when you're setting up a rapport with your students, not letting them know that you're real, right? If you're having a bad day, let them know you're having a bad day, right? They will then see you as a human as opposed to just this position of authority in class. And I always suggest using some sort of icebreaker prior to class, right? So we have Blackboard. All of y'all have shells now that you can use and set up your class. Even beforehand, maybe asking them some of those things. What is it that you like to do? What are the favorite things? That can help in building out a connection, right? If there's something that you can connect with. So that you've got some information on the student beforehand, right? Obviously, the what is it not? It's doing the opposite, not doing those sorts of things and listed on here. This slide I can make available to you all to share out, so if you want to reference it later. Okay, so you've got that all set up in your classroom and so forth. Inevitably, there's going to be some sort of challenge, right? Throughout a semester, throughout a year. Things to consider while you're dealing with those challenging behaviors, right? Is thinking about trying not to personalize that activity that is happening. We don't know what's going on, right, in that person's life, what's causing them to behave in that situation. Try to identify the specific behavior or concern that's being challenging for you. Is it a challenge that they're doing, or is it really you having a bad day, perhaps, right? Is it something that's you're reflecting onto them? Try to avoid creating that adversarial relationship, right? And if this happens, because we're an educational institution, why not try to use that moment as a learning opportunity, right? As an example, you came up today and talked to me, or the way that you spoke today made me feel X, Y, and Z, right? Can we have a discussion about that? I hope that this isn't what this means. Let's try to move forward from that. Or do you realize, actually you shouldn't be using you statements, but when I heard you say X, Y, and Z, this is the feeling that I got, right? I'm not sure if you're aware that this may cause people to feel a certain way using statements like that. You also want to make sure that you maintain professional communication, right? And try to remove your emotions. If someone has made you, get so excited about what was done or said, sometimes we can't control how our body reacts, but the tone and the voice that we're using can help calm that situation down. So thinking about those things. And of course, you obviously do want to address the inappropriate behaviors, right, and concerning behaviors from the beginning. Oftentimes in our department, we will get referrals or emails and so forth, and they'll tell us that this is something that happened 2 or 3 weeks ago. And they've let it progress to a certain point, and they're asking, how can we handle this? The best advice that we can give you is that you try to address it from the get-go. Nip it in the bud, right? Because when you don't nip the things in the bud at the beginning, they'll escalate into bigger things, which makes it much more difficult to go on. Again, I alluded to this, but making sure you're using I statements instead of you. Some examples there would be, I hear you're frustrated, however, right? Starting off with that. I'm happy to meet with you or discuss this after class. Can we do that so I can continue to provide the content that I need to for the rest of the class? And then you also want to make sure that you're taking notes of all of this. Maintain records, right? The worst thing we can do is try to put a timeline together several weeks later, right? Because we get distracted with so many things. When we're working through conduct cases, and Michael will talk a little bit about that as well too, or we're trying to investigate a situation as it refers to the Student Code of Conduct, we are trying to piece things together and when they occurred. And when things don't make sense for us, sometimes professors or even staff members will get upset when the student isn't held accountable for it because we don't have accurate information to be able to say, yes, it is a violation of the Student Code of Conduct. So take that into consideration as well too. Some scenarios. Have any of y'all had any of these happen in your class thus far? Either verbally aggressive behavior, general disrespect, aggressive electronic communication, emails, right? All caps, you can feel, right, it coming through your screen, inappropriate communication, or even students saying, well, I have the right to say whatever I want to, right? This is my First Amendment rights, free expression. I can say that. If you don't like it, oh well, right? How do you work through those situations? Again, the best way to do that is to think about where it's coming from and try to pinpoint what the cause of that situation is. Here's a helpful approach that I've put together on the screen for you. You know, the first time if you've gotten one of those scenarios, ask nicely, right? You're telling the student, I would like for you to change your behavior, or I would prefer you didn't send me emails in that tone, or please do not use caps anymore, right? All caps, things of that nature. Please stop sending me this. I've had to work with some students where they just continually send stuff and they don't get it, right? So you've got to say the stop or the no in somewhere in your communication with them, right? And make sure to set those specific boundaries. Stop raising your voice in class. I'm trying to provide this contact. Inappropriate words are not acceptable in this class, right? How would they know that, though? How would they know that that wasn't acceptable? Anybody? The first day of class, right? You can't expect them to know something if they weren't told about it, right? So setting up, going again back to that first day or those class, maybe it's 2 days that you have to spend depending on your situation, but you've got to let them know what you expect. I tell this to my staff, you know, this isn't classroom management, but applying it to a different situation. If we have a conflict with someone, how does the person know to change the behavior if you've not made them aware of the situation, right? And so the first approach would be asking them to stop based off of, you know, here are the expectations, we all agreed. You might even want to have them sign a document, if you will, right? That they're acknowledging that they've read it and understood that these are the expectations. If it continues to happen, that might be where you go the next step of getting a little bit more into it and telling them, I'm telling you this, right? Communicating. Before, they've got a choice, right? At the beginning, they're a little bit free way to be able to change the behavior. When you get to the telling point, that choice is becoming a little bit less, right? Their choice in the matter, right? Communicate why it is inappropriate for it. Give them a reason to help them understand why you're asking them to change that behavior, right? If this continues, this is what might happen. You as professors and faculty in your class do have the right to let students leave the class, right? Tell them to leave the class if it's getting to the point where it is disrupting what you are trying to communicate, you know, your course content and so forth. However, you cannot tell them that they can never come back to class. Does anybody know why? Anybody? No? Okay. So they have an educational right to be here, right? It is their constitutional right to have an education as well. But you can set up limitations and parameters on what they need to do to be able to come back to class, right? So in the moment, you can ask them to leave. But sending a statement or stating in your class at that point in time, you are never to come back to class, that's a big no-no. That's a big no-no, okay? I'm getting a lot of, oh, I didn't know that. Yes.
Question over here, can they come back the same day? Like, oh, I've calmed down, can I come back?
That is totally up to you. That is, you have that prerogative in the classroom for that day. If you've asked them to leave because, and you state why they're doing it, and so forth, that's your prerogative. You say, step out of class, you can come back in once you've calmed down in 15 minutes, or I'm going to step out and meet with you, see if we're in agreement on it. In that conversation, you might find out that they're having a really bad day, right? Maybe their dog died, or maybe they didn't have enough money to eat food this morning, right? Which we get a lot of. You don't know what caused that. So you would want to have that conversation with them to understand what's going on and then make a decision after that. Sir?
Remember the UTSA case where one of the students was putting the feet up and then one professor asked her to leave, and then she called the police to the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And it got viral because some people were recording.
Mm-hmm.
And when it went online, the public opinion is with the student, it's never with the professor. I care about my classroom management, but as much as I care about the classroom management, I also care about not appearing online and going wild.
Sure.
I don't want that to happen.
Sure.
Now you say that we have the right to leave. We have the right to ask them to leave.
Yep.
But turned out UTSA filed an investigation against the professor.
And they can. We can have investigations from that.
So she escalated the situation according to their...
I don't know all of the details. Right. I don't know all of the details of that case.
I'm very sure about us just asking them to leave. I'm not very sure about it.
And you have to feel comfortable with what you can manage in that class, right? If it is becoming a safety issue and people are doing things, tripping each other up and things of that nature, if you don't want to ask them to leave, guess what the other option is that you have? You as a professor can say, class is dismissed. We will see you on Wednesday, right? And then you go to document that. I would suggest you go straight to your department chair or dean to let them know. If you have information on what caused all of that to happen, then you would document it and send it through conduct. And we'll talk about that in a little bit with Michael. But there are options for that. I'm just saying you do have that right to ask him. That might not be the right choice for you based on that situation. It's not a black and white situation. It is very situational.
The bottom line is if something like that happens and it goes viral, don't expect support from home.
Oh, I know that for a fact. When we, this has nothing to do with classroom management, but when we started the food pantry, we had a lot of negative comments made. Why are you doing that? Students shouldn't, you shouldn't really. So that's going to happen regardless. If you know that you've done your due diligence, you've followed your guidelines, you've tried to make an attempt with, again, I'm not telling you to do this like right, you have to understand the situation. This isn't this is, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, because things can escalate or de-escalate quickly, right? Once that's happened, again, if it doesn't comply, right, and you don't feel like you have any classroom and you've asked them and they're not responding to you as a university official, we can call UPD, right? If it escalates to that, most classrooms, I think all classrooms have the phones in there. If you don't have your phone on you, dialing 4444, saying there's a situation in the classroom that's escalating, and they will send an officer over, right? Now, you shouldn't be asking them to come over just because someone said something and made you feel uncomfortable, right? You would be calling UPD if you see that there's an immediate threat happening. People are tripping, people's safety are in concern, and things of that nature. Not because Sean said, oh, I don't like what you're teaching today, right? And is in disagreement with what you're teaching. They have a right as a student to disagree with the content that they have. In fact, wouldn't we want them to provide other viewpoints to the material we're having? That's how some people learn. Okay? Maybe? My thing is not advancing. Can you advance it to the next one? Thank you. So there is that, I'm glad you brought that up, there's that overlap with classroom management, your expectations and how you hope to have things work through, but things can escalate, right? And so how do you work to de-escalate those things? Have a strong classroom management approach, right? If you set those expectations, you give them the opportunity to respond, almost like ground rules, if you will, when you're having a meeting or you're meeting in committees, you set those with your colleagues. Why wouldn't we give that same opportunity for our students to give some input on how we want the class to be run, right? And how the information is presented. Establish those relationships. That's a huge part of it. Students want to feel valued as you do. Students want to feel respected as you do, right? So if you go in with the mindset of, hard nose, I'm the one with power here, I'm the one it's a yes, no situation, dictatorship, that's not going to go off well with our students, right? That doesn't go off well with you, right? Would you like your department chair or your dean or the president, for that matter, right, to give you that? That's not what you want. Very similar to that shared governance process that we so respect as faculty. Why not give them the opportunity to be a part of how we want the classrooms to run? And relationship building is a big part of that. You want to be intentional and goal-focused in your instructions and communications with students. how they're behaving might be their way of communicating with you, right? You might notice some things. Right now we're talking maybe more on those challenging behaviors or more negative behaviors, but it could also be a sign for you to say that something else is going on, right? And that's how they're communicating with you, like they need help, right? They're responding because they don't know where else to go, right? So being aware of those things to try to help de-escalate some of those challenging behaviors would be helpful. Again, it goes back to establishing those relationships. And then this last piece on every piece of data is helpful. You know, making notes after each class if you notice about something in the class or something has occurred, all of those pieces can help you put together a big picture of what actually is going on and help to de-escalate. You know, here's a philosophy here that I got from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. There really isn't a right way on how to de-escalate things. It's not a one way or other. Really the point of it is to try to be calm in the situation, right? If you react just as challenging as they are, there's not going to be much hope for trying to de-escalate the situation, right? Now, again, if it's a threat and things of that nature, safety is concerned, there's a different step that you need to take for that. But really, we are trying to ensure that, it says it's about to sign out. Ooh, okay. We are trying to ensure that we are handling the situation as best we can in a respectful manner, right, so that we don't continue to have problems. Again, if you feel there's a direct threat, you don't want to put yourself in that. Safety is definitely the utmost concern there. Priority is ensuring that you're not putting yourself in an unsafe situation. Sorry. I guess the battery went out here. I'm sorry. So, again, I've talked a little bit about this, but thinking about it from the perspective of the student, right? A large part of their time, it's out of the classroom. So getting to know what they're going through, getting to understand where they're at will help out in de-escalating a situation. Lots of times it may not be that what you said or what was done in class is the issue. It's something that's going on outside of class. Previous relationship building is important in that regard. That helps them to understand that they know that they can come to you. They feel supported in their work. And also just taking into consideration any other sort of dynamics that might be happening in their lives. I'm going to turn it over to Michael, because in a situation like this, if you had a challenging behavior and you've done all of the things that we've just talked about, you're going, what's next? I've tried all of these things, what do I do next? And I think that's where a lot of calls that we get into our office is, I've done this, this, and this. I don't know what to do next. And we get a lot of calls for consultation. So I'm going to turn it over to Michael, and he'll take it over from the conduct perspective.
Y'all still want me to use this for the... Okay. I think this is on, but I know it's not working for y'all in the house, but I'll still hold it and use it anyway. So I guess it makes me feel better. But so one of the things that I want to point out first, a couple of things, is that we must manage ourselves before we manage other people. So kind of speaking to what Lisa said a little bit, is I have to be aware of where I am in order to expertly de-escalate a situation. And so I'm going to get into a little bit of that here in just a minute. But be aware that you represent more than just the faculty in this moment. So I actually have a real life example of this. I had a student cut me off, take a parking spot the other day. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I was like, if this is anywhere else, I'm flipping the bird. But I'm literally wearing my name tag. And I'm like, okay, you won today, student. But yeah, so anyway, be aware of who you represent. So you're more than just yourself. You're the university, you're the faculty, you're Corpus Christi as a city. So, think about that. Also, you have the power as the faculty member. And so one of the things that we try to do and we try to preach is that we're working with the students and not for them or over them. So, just think about that with your role as an instructor. And then honestly, you have to tell yourself, like, what can you handle? So I don't want you to go into a situation where you have somebody screaming at you and screaming at other students, because sometimes it may get to that point. Know your limits. So know when you need to call me, know when you need to call UPD or something like that. Know when you need to get a consult in to help you out. And then the biggest thing is just remaining in control of yourself at all times, so that you're not reacting, you're not flipping the bird, you're not doing those things that you don't want to be doing. Let's see if this slide advances or not.
I'm going to go back there.
Maybe.
There you go.
Okay. So one of the things I want to talk about is escalation. So escalation is not the time for teaching, problem solving, or debriefing. So one of the things is it's going to be difficult. The student's not going to want to hear what you have to say as far as teaching if you're going to just keep giving the lesson in that moment. And it's also problem solving. It's not going to be a great moment for you to say, well, let's dive deeper into this. In the moment, you really want to get that person from here to here. So, and then also debriefing, like, you haven't gotten through the situation yet, so we can't debrief it. Does that make sense? Also, converse in a calm manner. So one of the things that I used to do is I used to work in housing, and I used to have to deal with drunk people a lot. And so I would get these drunk students. I had one that, like, tried to punch me one time and was just really screaming. And my voice never got above this level, because I always found that when the drunk students, or when the students that were really enraged were having issues or having something going on in their lives, when I kept my voice at that level, they would come back down because they couldn't hear me over themselves. So I was like, if I could just keep it at that level. That was something an old student affairs pro taught me. So I was like, I was really appreciative and have kept that one in my back pocket for a lot of years. So feel free to steal that. Be aware of the environment. So if it's happening in the middle of class, if you can catch them after class, great. Or as Lisa said earlier, if you need to dismiss class and deal with it in the moment there, definitely those are two things that you can do. Know that you have the choice to ask that student to leave. And so sometimes, we talked about earlier, public opinion may not be on your side. But knowing that you have to control a group of, maybe 20 to 30, or sometimes hundreds, depending on the class size, that you have to make sure that decorum is kept at all times during that you have that opportunity to ask those students to leave. So knowing what your boundaries are and setting those up and communicating those expectations, so that you can always walk it back and say, hey, I told you on the syllabus what the expectations were. So we know this. We've already been there. I get a lot of calls from you all to help out with these kinds of situations, and I'm happy to do it. It's one of the things that I really enjoy, collaborating with you all on these classroom management situations, because otherwise I don't get to work with you unless it's academic misconduct, and no one likes that. So, but it's just an opportunity that you can bring in other people. Don't take anything a student says to you personally, because
what needs to happen with the student? How can we reach out to them? How can we offer support? Some of those cases are sometimes really complicated or involve a student who's very distressed and is showing some high-risk behaviors, and we have some concern for their own wellness and their safety, or also the safety of other people. So some of those referrals that we receive go to the iCare team. If you're not familiar with iCare team is our behavior intervention team on our campus. It is comprised of someone from academic services, a representative from the counseling center, a representative from UPD, disability services, and from conduct, and myself and our case manager. So we need to talk about what's going on with that student and what kind of interventions do we want to make a recommendation for in order to kind of help that student and kind of bring them back to a place of safety, or give them some options for what they may be needed to do next in school. So I'm sharing all of this so that you can know that sometimes there may be some confusion on it. Is this a conduct issue, or is this just something that I want to make a referral to the care team? So I wanted to make sure we had a moment to talk about, well, what's the difference? So just as Michael said, there's behaviors that violate our code of conduct, and when that happens, there's a conduct process. But there's also students that are showing some stuff that we're just concerned about, right? But it may not be a violation of the code of conduct, because I can be depressed and still be a functioning student. I can be depressed and still not violate the code of conduct, or I can be depressed and violate the student code of conduct. So just wanted to make sure there was a good description here of like what we're doing and how we're doing it. Because we're all working with the same software, the same system, we're on the same floor, we're doing a lot of talking with one another. If there is a student where there's overlap, we're going to have those we're talking with one another about that. And we're making some decisions about, you know what, we have a lot of concern about this person's safety. They may also have a conduct issue, but let's check in first about the safety piece, right? So we're trying to really approach students being very aware of just kind of having a trauma-informed care lens and a mental health lens, and really trying to put our students first. But we're also very aware that this person is maybe impacting the classroom, might be impacting roommates, might be impacting faculty and staff, or activating several offices and departments. So we are really trying to take a holistic approach with the student, but also with our campus. So we are working very closely together in those areas. To make a referral, if you go to the Care and Assistance website, which both of our websites you can find on the Dean of Students site, you'll want to click here, I care about a student and want to help. And it's going to take you to that I Care referral form that you probably are familiar with, so that we can reach out. And like Michael, we're going to contact you, let you know we received the referral. Sometimes we want more information, sometimes to reach out to other parties who might have information, and then ultimately try to reach out to the student. Do you have questions that we can answer about that process? Okay, well, yes. Well, you have options. So within Starfish, yes, people are using the flags to kind of notify that this person has had a series of absences. That does not alert me. I can see them when I look, but what it does is it's going to go to those in academic services who are going to reach out if that person is got a coach, if they've got a advisor. Right. So, and they'll try to reach out to those students and follow up with them in that way. Our cases, because sometimes someone misses 3 classes and they're just choosing not to go to class, right? If you're reaching out to me and you're like, hey, this person hasn't showed up, today I got notified as someone who hasn't gone 3 weeks, okay? What we're doing is reaching out to those other professors. Hey, are they going to your class? What can you tell us? And reaching out to that student to kind of try to find out what else is going on. I also take a look at Starfish to see, like, are there other flags? Are there meetings? Is there other information there? Because we're trying to gather information so that we can, when we're meeting with that student, be able to give them some good options. Because maybe they're not going because they don't have transportation. Maybe it's because they've decided they want to change majors and they don't know that you should drop or that you should talk to your advisor. You know, there could be all kinds of reasons. So we want to gather enough information.
Still a judgment call. But what happens with the Starfish, and I know you all do the best you can, is I raise the flag. They make several attempts to contact the student, and there are limits to what they can do. If the student doesn't answer the emails and doesn't answer their phone calls, I mean, what are they supposed to do? Stop them?
Right.
Or things like that. But then the end result is the student falls through the cracks, doesn't pass. And again, I know that's going to happen sometimes, but
So some of that is going to happen. Some of that is, you know, if you feel like I want to something extra, you can definitely reach out and make the eye care referral. But also we're getting referrals from the advisors and from the coaches. And so we have good relationships with them, and so they're sometimes contacting us to say like, hey, I'm seeing that this student's not going to class. I've tried this many times. What else can be done?
So
yes.
Yep, we have established a really good relationship. There's been a lot of transition in spaces and so forth, but we have been on the road to try to get into offices to make sure that we want to work together, right? And this is what we're seeing on this end. I think the beauty of what's happened with this transition is that there's a new set of eyes on processes that have been happening for a while, and quite honestly questioning them like, okay, we are saying this, but that's not what's in our policy or our procedure. Like, how do our students know this? It goes back to almost like your syllabus. Like, how do the students know where to get help if we're not informing them of that help, right? Or how do we know the student has been contacted if we're not jotting it down and we're not documenting it, right? Or in some cases, it could very well be, and no offense to, us or them, they may not want to meet with us because we do the same thing too. We might 3 times, but we're also communicating to them saying, hey, do you have a relationship? Have you already established that relationship? Or have you learned that there's a faculty member who has a pretty good in with that student? Can they be our, we're concerned. We're here to try to help you in that situation. So it's really about communication and all of those things, and we're really trying to close those gaps to ensure that we are helping.
So I've also included another handout. This is the How to Help a Student in Distress. This is something that was developed from the Counseling Center, and Dr. Teresa Sharp shared it with me recently. And so I wanted to share it all with you. This could be a whole other presentation in itself. And so if you're interested in something like that, definitely reach out to me, and I can collaborate with Teresa, and we can present on how to help a student in distress. So that's not what this presentation is, but wanted to make sure you had it and could refer back to it later.
I also wanted to point out that in this PowerPoint slide, I have captured some resources that might be beneficial to you. This classroom management site, these are all linked in, so we will make sure that this gets to you as through CFE. We'll take you to just one-pagers on ideas on like the first day of class, how to manage class and things of that nature. Then I also have some articles and videos and stuff. I haven't seen all of them. I got these from a colleague, but on some things for de-escalation, procedures and things of that nature. And then the last one too is some helpful publications on addressing disruptive behavior. So if that's something, I know you're going, how do we have time to read all of this? I thought you might appreciate that in your time as you're preparing, for next semester, things of that nature. There might be something from there that could be helpful to you as a tool in that regard. The one-pagers that we had, they were intended for you to take so that you can keep with your laptop if you need to, or by your desk, right? Pin it on your bulletin board as an easy resource for you. In addition, we do have the magnets for you. I realize not everyone probably has somewhere to put it on, but punch it onto your push board or right by your phone. That QR code takes you straight to the Dean of Students office. If you don't remember, what site it was or things of that nature, give us a call as well too, or shoot us an email at deanofstudents@tamucc.edu, and we'd be willing to help you out.